Welcome to the Fantasy Thinker. I'm Jared Quartermatch, and today I'm going to be doing a review of the first half of James Blish's Cities of Flight. And I say the first half because this is a compilation of 4 short novels that Blish wrote back in the 50s and 60s. He wrote the first novel in here is called They Shall Have Stars. It was written in 1956. It was also published under the title Year 2018, which it's a good thing they changed it because it wouldn't have fit anymore. So the second novel is called A Life for the Stars. And so I'm reading this part of a read along with the folks from Page Chewing, and we are reading the first 2 novels this month. We're going to be having a discussion on it this weekend, so it'll probably be out sometime next week. So look for that, especially if you're interested in reading these, or if you have read those, or if I convince you to read them now with this review. But going into the reviews on these books, I'm only going to review the first 2 books because that's what I've read so far. The collection was put together in 1970. The first part of the review here, I am not a fan of this cover. I don't find it attractive. I find the Cities in Flight kind of hard to read. And just the dull tone, the dull greenish tone is it's not a very attractive cover, to be honest with you. But that being said, let's get into what's inside. So the first novel, Cities in Flight, the first one is called They Shall Have Stars. And so, in this compilation, this first novel, it's the author kind of eases us gently into his futuristic vision of mankind. We start with a very recognizable Washington, D.C., and all the politics that surround like the big budget funding of research project that could be, that could possibly be used, or at least as disguised as possibly being used for the military. And so we're told in the very beginning that the scientific methods we all know and love no longer apply to what we are about to be introduced to. And the theme of this first novel is aptly displayed, I should say, right in the quote in the beginning of the book from Dylan Thomas. And it says, "And death shall have no dominion, dead men naked they shall be one, with the man in the wind and the west moon, when their bones are picked clean, and the clean bones gone, they shall have stars at elbow and foot." And so that's kind of, that tells us right away what mankind is after, or, at least mankind's leaders. And Blish does us the favor of bringing us around to this idea with a steady course of events that lead up to what will be the future exploration of the concepts he puts in there. And every chapter in here for the first novel begins with one of these quotes from some historical figure or other. Some you'll recognize, some you won't, or I didn't. And these quotes quite bluntly tie into the themes introduced into the following chapter. So that's what you're in for with these interesting observations on human nature that Blish puts in here. Every chapter begins with one of these quotes from, like I said, from some historical figure or another. So Blish is he's obviously quite the science nerd, and he's not afraid to display it on the page. Sometimes in the form of actual equations that he writes out. Whether they're real or not, I have no idea. Probably not. But there seems to be a lot of explanation in this first book, which was over expository and, like, from my point of view, a little unnecessary. But that said, the politics were fascinating, and I loved how that, like, played out between civilian government, military, and corporate interests. The plotting of this first novel isn't, too intricate. It's a pretty straightforward plot, but the character work is very well done. You really get to know the two main characters in here, and he also, Blish, that is the author, he delves into themes of religion and what it means to the human race. And if you ever read Carl Sagan, he later did like a similar theme in his book Contact, which was, a big movie with Jodie Foster, and which had these religious zealots protesting the advancement of science. And the ironic twist that Blish presents us is that the protesters use robots to do their protesting for them, so nobody gets hurt. And I kind of I found that hilarious, because it's so ironic, and it's just it's a really nice ironic twist that Blish gave us, about protesting, and it contrasts with Carl Sagan's view later on in Contact, where people are actually hurt from the protesting and things blowing up or what have you. But so Blish gave us a little bit of a nicer interpretation of protesting, but um, still, it was very amusing and well done. The a question about afterlife gets raised further on in the book that is poignant to these novels, but it's a spoiler, so I'm not going to go into that further here. Questions of faith do loom large in the book, not only of the religious variety, but also of faith in humanity itself. And so there's also like a theme of size, and like just how large the universe is and how small we are in it. And the book focuses a lot on Jupiter, which that's basically a blunt instrument that Blish uses to emphasize this theme of size. And it also ties into the size of the ego in the vision of the one of the characters, Senator Wagner, um, who has put all this into motion. And so questions again get asked in this novel about the need for huge projects and how they reflect on a civilization. And so lots of fascinating stuff in that first novel. In the first novel, what's it called again? They Shall Have Stars. Yeah. And so in the second novel, A Life for the Stars, we're like, boom, thrown far into the future, and we're given brand new point of view character. His name is Chris, and he's like the only point of view character in the second novel. And through Chris, we are introduced to the theme of being ripped from home and finding a home where you can, a life for the stars. Um, and so this not only happens to Chris, but it is continually happening to the human race and their cities in flight, so to speak. Um, so that's the basic theme around the whole novel. It's really kind of hard to say too much about this novel without giving away details in the first novel. But needless to book, needless to say, uh, in this book, the second novel, the science kind of falls apart. Blish abandons the hard science talk and goes right into like the fantasy with how things work for the human race at this point. Um, the high point of the second book, A Life of the Stars, is just like in the first book, is the politics, and they're great. Blish does a great job of weaving politics into all the decisions of the characters and what they got to do. And like our main character Chris, he somehow gets involved with those in power through like circumstances, some ingenuity, and some flat out bravery. And so Blish definitely moves the plot along in this one. The plot's a little better in this one than the first one, and to have like events with Chris come to this logical and satisfying conclusion is actually it was actually a good quick read that was satisfying in that manner. And there was a brief mention of an alien race, but most of the conflict is doesn't deal with an alien race. It deals with, just like today, human versus human. So there's some sharp commentary in here, lambasting the military-industrial complex and the ineptitude of news agencies, and which, the latter, the news agency thing, is kind of interesting, considering when this book was written. If Blish could have see today's news, he would probably be a little more hopeless for the human race as a whole. But anyway, he lays these things out, and he explores them very well. So that's definitely a plus in the book. Yeah. So, in the end, uh, the definition of home, of course, changes for our main character, as it should. As a story progresses, so should the main character progress, and that's good characterization. He doesn't stay the same. It was well done. So it changes for him, and it changes for humanity. Very fun, interesting first two novels in this collection. So I'm glad I read it. Can't wait to talk about it some more with my conversation pals at Page Chewing. And check this book out if you haven't already. And especially if you like, good old classic sci-fi, this is the one for you. And so, with that all said, this is part one. I do plan to do part two when I finish the rest of these other two short novels in this collection next month sometime. Whew. Be good to each other, and thank you.